Welcome, dear viewers, to another chilling episode where we uncover the darkest, most terrifying corners of the world. Tonight, we journey to the Eternal City, Rome, a place of breathtaking beauty, ancient history, and relentless hauntings. From eerie catacombs to cursed palaces, the ghosts of Rome whisper their secrets through the ruins, lurking in the shadows of history. If you dare, stay with me as we venture into the most haunted places in Rome. But be warned, not all who visit these sites leave unscathed. Rome, known as the Eternal City, has stood for thousands of years, a place where emperors ruled, gladiators fought, and civilizations rose and fell. But beneath its sunlit piazzas and grand basilicas lies a far darker history, one shrouded in tragedy, betrayal, and untimely death. For centuries, Rome has been a stage for executions, deadly conspiracies, and unexplainable horrors. Leaving behind more than just ruins, they left behind restless spirits. Imagine walking down a dimly lit alleyway where ancient cobblestones echo beneath your feet, the whispers of the past drifting through the cold night air. The statues and fountains seem to watch you with hollow eyes. The wind carries voices not of the present, but of those long dead. This is the Rome we will explore tonight, a city where the past refuses to be forgotten, where every shadow holds a ghostly presence, and where history bleeds into the supernatural. Many who visit Rome come in search of art, culture, and history. They marvel at the Colosseum, the Vatican, and the Pantheon, but few realize that these same places have seen blood spilled, lives lost, and spirits condemned to wander for eternity. From the eerie depths of the Capuchin crypt to the ghostly bridge of Ponte Sisto, we will uncover the terrifying tales that lurk beneath the city's majestic facade. Some locations are so haunted that even the bravest skeptics have been forced to question what they once dismissed. Stories of apparitions, disembodied voices, and chilling encounters have been whispered through generations. Some have seen shadowy figures flickering at the edge of their vision, while others have felt invisible hands gripping them in the darkness. Rome is alive with the spirits of its past, and tonight, we will seek them out. So, before we embark on this terrifying journey, I must ask, do you believe in ghosts? By the end of this episode, you may have an answer. But be warned, once you've heard these stories, you might never look at Rome the same way again. Now, turn down the lights, make sure you're not alone, and brace yourself for the chilling truth behind the most haunted places in Rome. The Capuchin Crypt, the bone church beneath the bustling streets of Rome. A dark secret lies hidden away in the heart of the city. Known to the few who dare visit it as the Capuchin Crypt, or more chillingly as the Bone Church, this crypt is one of the most unnerving places in the world. To the unassuming tourist, the Capuchin Crypt is but a strange relic, a curiosity tucked away beneath the charming facade of Santa Maria della Concezione dei Cappuccini, a church with a rich history dating back to the early 1600s. But what lies beneath is far more unsettling than anything you could expect from a religious site in one of the world's most vibrant cities. The bones speak as you descend into the depths of the crypt. A palpable sense of silence envelopes you. The air grows colder, and the weight of the centuries seems to press against your shoulders. The walls, dark with age, seem to breathe as though they're alive. In the dim light of flickering candles, the full horror of the crypt becomes clear. The bones of over 4,000 Capuchin monks, brothers who dedicated their lives to prayer, service, and contemplation, have been meticulously arranged in intricate and almost artistic patterns. They form chandeliers that hang ominously from the ceilings, their hollow eyes staring down at visitors who pass below. Some bones are arranged in symmetrical shapes, while others serve as delicate, eerie sculptures, skulls embedded in the walls like forgotten sentinels, femurs entwined to form arches. In the center, a haunting altar stands, made entirely of human bones, a grim reminder of the monks' beliefs in the transient nature of life. The monks of the Capuchin order, who lived in extreme asceticism and devotion, had a deep understanding of death. For them, death was not the end, but a transition, a passage into another realm. Their cemetery was a place of honor and spiritual reflection. However, their choice to decorate the crypt with their own remains was a radical one, a symbol of their desire to be a constant reminder of mortality. The idea was not morbid, it was meant to inspire the living to reflect on their inevitable end and to live humbly in preparation for it. And yet, there's something profoundly disturbing about seeing these remains, these very people, arranged in such an unsettling way. There is no mistaking the chill in the air, the flickering of the candlelight casting grotesque shadows on the walls. It's as if the crypt itself is alive with a strange, oppressive energy. The unease of the visitors to the Capuchin crypt often describe the overwhelming sense of unease that takes over them as they wander through the bone-laden hallways. There is no denying the macabre beauty of the arrangements, but there is something about the place that feels far from peaceful. Some have likened it to a place where the very spirits of the monks linger, where the line between the living and the dead has blurred. Cold spots appear unexpectedly throughout the crypt, sending shivers down the spine of anyone who dares to venture deeper into its bowels. These cold spots seem to move, shifting as if a presence is drifting past, just out of sight. Others have reported hearing faint whispers, soft, unintelligible voices that seem to murmur prayers in a language that sounds distant and lost. It's said that these prayers can be heard in the silence of the crypt, echoing from the stone walls, as though the monks are still praying for the souls of the living. A few brave souls who have spent more time in the crypt have claimed to feel the brush of invisible hands on their skin. The sensation is fleeting, but the cold fingers seem to linger long after they've gone. There is an unmistakable feeling of being watched, of being surrounded by the unseen. Visitors sometimes feel a pressure on their chest, an invisible weight that makes it difficult to breathe, as if the very air itself is thick with history, or perhaps the spirits of the monks themselves. Could these sensations be the result of mere imagination, the power of suggestion? Or is there something more to this crypt than meets the eye? The truth is, many of those who visit the Capuchin crypt leave with a lingering sense of dread, a feeling that they've encountered something far darker than they could have ever anticipated. The monks' belief in the afterlife for the Capuchin monks, death was not a fearsome enemy to be avoided, but an inevitable step toward union with God. Their philosophy was rooted in humility, poverty, and self-denial. The bones of their brothers, arranged in the crypt, were not a display of grotesque morbidity but a poignant reminder of the fleeting nature of life. In their belief, death was merely a transition, a passage into a greater understanding of the divine. The monks' decision to use their remains to decorate the crypt, creating a sacred space from their very bones, reflects this belief in the sanctity of death. It's said that each skull, each femur, each rib tells a story, a silent prayer, a solemn vow, a final testament to their faith. However, there is an unsettling quality to the way these bones are displayed. They are not buried or hidden away in quiet graves. They are exposed, their skeletal forms staring out from every corner of the crypt, forever trapped in the gaze of the living. Their remains speak in silence, urging those who visit to confront their own mortality. The shadowy figures, some who have ventured into the depths of the Capuchin crypt, have gone even further in describing their experiences. They speak of shadowy figures that seem to move just out of sight, dark shapes that flicker in the corner of your vision before disappearing into the stone walls. These figures are never fully visible, but their presence is undeniable. Some believe they are the restless spirits of the monks, still lingering in the crypt, watching over the living and guarding their eternal resting place. Others claim to have seen brief flashes of movement, an arm, a figure crossing the hallway, or a hooded shape standing in the distance before vanishing into thin air. Some have felt the sensation of being brushed against, a cold gust of air sweeping past them as though someone, or something, was standing close by. The feeling of being followed, of never being truly alone, hangs heavily in the air. The more skeptical of these accounts chalk them up to the natural play of light and shadow, or perhaps the psychological effect of being in such an unnerving place. But for those who experience these strange phenomena firsthand, the crypt is far from ordinary. It is a place of dark energy, where the veil between the living and the dead feels dangerously thin. A final resting place. The Capuchin crypt may be a place of rest for the 4,000 monks who have been interred within its walls, but it is also a place of haunting mystery. The bones of these men, once living, breathing individuals, have been turned into art, a chilling testament to the transient nature of life. But do these bones hold more than just memories? Do they carry with them the spirits of the monks, forever bound to this place? It is impossible to say for certain. Some believe that the monks' spirits continue to linger in the crypt, watching over those who dare to intrude upon their eternal rest. Others claim that the crypt itself is a living entity, feeding off the fear and unease of the living who wander through its bone-laden halls. But for all its haunting beauty and eerie atmosphere, the Capuchin crypt remains one of Rome's most visited, and most feared, sights. It is a place where death is not an end, but a beginning, and where the line between the living and the dead is drawn in bones. For those brave enough to visit, it is an experience that will stay with them long after they leave, a chilling reminder that, in the end, all that remains of us is dust, and perhaps a lingering whisper from the other side. The final whisper as you leave the Capuchin crypt. You might catch yourself glancing over your shoulder, wondering if the monks' spirits are still watching, still waiting in the shadows. Perhaps, just perhaps, their bones are not the only thing that remains in this eerie, sacred place. And as the city of Rome continues its march through time, one thing is certain: the Capuchin crypt will stand as a timeless reminder that death is never truly gone, only transformed. Would you dare to descend into its depths? Castel Sant'Angelo, the fortress of lost souls standing ominously along the Tiber River, Castel Sant'Angelo looms like a silent sentinel of history, its dark silhouette cutting through the Roman skyline. With its towering structure, its marble and stone walls, and its long, winding history, the castle has been many things over the centuries: a mausoleum, a fortress, and a prison. Each transformation carried with it a new layer of tragedy, and the echoes of sorrow that fill its halls are not soon forgotten. From its beginnings as a tomb for Emperor Hadrian and his family to its more recent role as a military fortress and prison, Castel Sant'Angelo has witnessed centuries of human suffering and despair. Its dungeons have held some of history's most unfortunate souls, those who met grisly fates, whose anguished cries still seem to reverberate through the stone. Executions, betrayals, and brutal confinement left their scars on the castle, and today, it's not just the physical structure that holds a history, but the very walls that whisper the secrets of the past. As the Tiber River quietly flows nearby, few can stand before the castle without feeling the weight of the ages pressing down on them. But beneath the castle's imposing exterior and its historical significance, there's an unsettling presence, one that even the bravest of souls cannot ignore. A presence that lingers in the dark corners of the fortress, in the shadowy halls and winding passages. A fortress of souls. At first glance, Castel Sant'Angelo appears as if it could be a monumental work of architecture, a symbol of power and fortitude. But the deeper one ventures into its dungeons, the more apparent it becomes that this fortress was not only built to keep enemies at bay, it was constructed to trap and hold the very spirits of the past. The air inside is thick with an unnatural chill, and each room, each cell, seems to pulse with the pain and sorrow of the countless souls who met their fate within its walls. The castle was transformed into a fortress and prison over the centuries, and it's in these later years that it gained a reputation for being a place of torment. As a prison, it held those who had fallen out of favor with the powerful, those who were suspected of treachery, and those whose fate had been sealed by betrayal or cruelty. Some prisoners were tortured in the castle's deepest cells, their cries drowned out by the thick stone walls. Their deaths, often brutal and unjust, left a permanent mark on the fortress. The castle was also the site of many executions, carried out in the courtyard or in the shadow of its massive walls. It is said that the last screams of those who were sentenced to death still echo in the stone, the desperate cries trapped in the very fabric of the building. Visitors who wander through the castle today have reported an overwhelming sense of unease, as if the souls of the long dead are watching, waiting, and lingering in the shadows. Among the many spirits said to haunt Castel Sant'Angelo, one is particularly notorious: Beatrice Cenci. The ghost of Beatrice Cenci. The tragic tale of Beatrice Cenci is one that has been passed down through the centuries. A story of a noblewoman whose life was marred by cruelty, and whose death became one of the most infamous in Roman history. Beatrice was born into a noble family in the late 16th century, but her father, Francesco Cenci, was a tyrant, a man who subjected her and her siblings to horrendous abuse. He was known to be violent, cruel, and sadistic, and Beatrice's life was marked by suffering. In 1598, Beatrice, desperate to escape her father's relentless abuse, plotted with her stepmother and two brothers to kill Francesco. The murder was a desperate act of survival, a last resort to free themselves from his oppressive and violent grip. However, when their plan was uncovered, the family was arrested, and Beatrice was put on trial for the crime. The trial was a spectacle of injustice. Beatrice, despite being only 22 years old, was condemned to death for her role in her father's murder. The public execution was a horrifying affair. Beatrice was beheaded in the most brutal manner, her severed head presented to the crowd. But it was not the brutality of her execution that cemented her place in history. It was the haunting image of her spirit that would forever bind her to the castle. The haunting of Castel Sant'Angelo. Ever since Beatrice's execution, her spirit has been said to haunt the vicinity of Castel Sant'Angelo. On the anniversary of her death, September 11th, her sorrowful ghost is said to roam the bridge outside the castle, her severed head cradled in her hands. Those who have been unfortunate enough to encounter her spirit speak of a chilling presence, one that strikes fear into their hearts. Her face is pale, her eyes hollow, and her expression is one of utter despair, a reflection of the torment she suffered during her life. Witnesses claim to see Beatrice's ghostly figure at twilight, drifting along the bridge, her form faint and ethereal. The cries of the condemned seem to echo in the night air, and some have even reported hearing her soft whispers, as if she's trying to tell her story. It's said that when the moon is full, her spirit is especially active, her ghostly figure appearing more frequently to those who dare walk along the bridge after dark. On one fateful evening in 1920, a group of tourists was passing by the bridge, unaware of the haunting history that lingered there. As they approached the castle, they suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of cold, as if an invisible force had descended upon them. One of the tourists, a young woman, turned her head and gasped, staring in shock at the figure of a woman standing just ahead of them. The figure was dressed in tattered clothing, her long hair flowing in the breeze. But it was the sight of her hands that caused the tourists to freeze in terror. Her severed head was cradled gently in her arms. Before they could react, the figure vanished into the night, leaving behind nothing but the cold, oppressive air and the haunting echo of her sorrow. For the rest of their lives, the tourists spoke of the chilling encounter, but no one ever truly believed their story, until others began to share similar accounts. Many claimed to have seen the ghost of Beatrice Cenci at Castel Sant'Angelo, her tormented spirit forever bound to the place where her life was tragically cut short. Those who wander too close to the bridge at night say that the ghost of Beatrice seems to follow them, her hollow eyes watching from the shadows. Some even claim to have heard her whispering for help, pleading for release from her eternal torment. The lost souls of the castle. But Beatrice Cenci is not the only spirit that roams the halls of Castel Sant'Angelo. The castle itself is a burial ground for the lost souls of those who met untimely, tragic ends within its walls. Those who died in the dungeons, those who were tortured in the dark cells, and those who were executed in its shadow, they all left a part of themselves behind. Visitors to the castle often report an oppressive sense of despair that clings to the walls. Some have experienced an unexplainable chill in the air, while others hear faint, whispering voices in the silence. There are stories of shadowy figures darting between the castle's corridors, of flickering lights that seem to move on their own, and of doors that creak open without explanation. The very stones of Castel Sant'Angelo seem to pulse with the remnants of the lost souls who once called it home. A fortress of the damned Castel Sant'Angelo stands as a chilling testament to the darker side of history, a fortress built upon bloodshed, betrayal, and sorrow. It has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the struggles of the oppressed, and the final moments of those who met their end within its walls. But it also bears the marks of the souls that were left behind, their spirits trapped within the castle, eternally bound to the place where they suffered. As night falls and the moon rises over the Tiber River, Castel Sant'Angelo remains silent, its walls whispering tales of the past. Will you be the next to encounter the lost souls of this ancient fortress? The spirit of Beatrice Cenci, or any of the other forgotten souls, might just be waiting for you to walk into the shadows and hear their story. The catacombs of Rome, tunnels of the dead beneath the bustling streets of Rome, hidden from the eyes of the living, lies a labyrinth that stretches deep into the earth. The catacombs, mysterious, ancient, and filled with the bones of the dead, are a place where time seems to stand still. For centuries, these winding tunnels have housed the remains of early Christians, martyrs, and even pagans. Today, they are a haunting reminder of the city's long and complex history, a chilling snapshot of what lies beneath the surface of one of the most vibrant cities in the world. A city of the dead. The catacombs are not just a collection of burial sites, they are an underground city. Built by early Christians around the 2nd century AD, these subterranean tombs were used to bury the dead and offer a place for religious ceremonies. With the rise of Christianity in Rome, many early Christians were persecuted for their beliefs. As a result, they sought refuge in these dark, damp tunnels, away from the prying eyes of the Roman authorities. The catacombs were not just a place of burial, they were a symbol of defiance, a way for early Christians to resist the persecution they faced. The tunnels are lined with thousands of tombs, many of which are simple niches carved into the stone. Others are more elaborate, containing frescoes, inscriptions, and symbols of the faith. The dead were interred here in the belief that they would be safe from the ravages of time and the violence of the outside world. Yet, in the dark corners of the catacombs, the weight of their long-forgotten lives still lingers. As you step into the entrance of the catacombs, the air feels heavier, colder, and damp. The scent of earth and decay fills your nostrils, and the darkness presses in on you, as though the walls themselves are closing in. The narrow corridors stretch endlessly, twisting in on themselves like a labyrinth. The silence is thick and unnerving, broken only by the sound of your footsteps echoing through the narrow passages. The deeper you venture into the catacombs, the more you can feel the presence of the past, the lives lost, the struggles endured, and the prayers whispered in the darkness. The weight of history. The catacombs have been home to millions of souls over the centuries, and each burial site tells its own story. The remains of early Christians, many of whom were martyred for their faith, lie side by side with the remains of pagans, whose beliefs once conflicted with the rising power of Christianity. In many ways, the catacombs are a testament to the religious struggles that defined ancient Rome, a place where different faiths, different worlds, intersected in death. As you wander through the labyrinthine tunnels, you pass row after row of tombs. Some are marked with crosses, others with symbols of the fish, a common Christian symbol of the time. The frescoes that adorn some of the walls depict biblical scenes, a reminder of the faith that kept the early Christians strong in the face of adversity. Some of the tombs contain the remains of martyrs, their names inscribed on plaques in the stone. Others hold the bones of ordinary men and women who lived and died in the shadows of the empire, their identities long forgotten. But what is most unsettling about the catacombs is not the relics of the past, but the way in which the place feels alive. It is as though the dead are still here, watching, waiting. The air is thick with an oppressive silence, and the weight of history presses down on you as you move deeper into the underground world. It is as if the souls of the departed are trapped in the labyrinth, still wandering its corridors, unable to find peace. The haunting presence. Many who have ventured into the catacombs report a strange and unnerving feeling, as though they are being watched by unseen eyes. The deeper they go, the stronger the sense of unease becomes. Some have heard footsteps behind them, only to turn around and find no one there. Others have felt the hairs on the back of their necks stand up, as if an invisible presence is standing close by. The sound of whispers, soft and indistinct, echoes through the corridors, adding to the eerie atmosphere, but it is the ghostly apparitions that have caused the most disturbance. Some visitors claim to have seen figures moving in the darkness, shadows that flicker at the edge of their vision. These apparitions are often described as faceless, their features hidden in the shadows, their forms fleeting and insubstantial. They move silently through the tunnels, vanishing as quickly as they appear. It is as if these figures are not entirely part of this world, but something caught between the living and the dead. The apparition of a faceless figure is the most commonly reported haunting in the catacombs. These entities are often seen in the shadows, moving swiftly through the narrow corridors, disappearing just before the visitor can get a closer look. Some believe that these figures are the souls of the early Christians who were martyred for their faith, forever trapped in the catacombs, unable to find rest. Others suggest that these are the souls of the many pagans who were buried here, their spirits now caught in a world between life and death. Some visitors have even claimed to have had physical experiences with these apparitions. One man, who had been exploring the catacombs late at night, reported feeling an icy chill sweep over him as he passed one of the narrow passages. He turned to find a shadowy figure standing at the end of the tunnel. The figure appeared to be watching him, but as he stepped forward, it vanished into the darkness. He quickly turned to leave, but as he did, he could hear footsteps following him, faint but persistent. When he reached the exit, the footsteps ceased, and he found himself alone once more. The silent watchers, the catacombs, with their endless maze of narrow passageways and hidden tombs, seemed to hold a secret, something that refuses to rest. The souls of those buried here, whether they are early Christians, martyrs, or pagans, seem to linger, trapped in the depths of the earth. Visitors report feeling the weight of these souls watching them, following their every move. It is as though the dead are still present, still aware, and still yearning for something they cannot have. Peace. As you walk through the catacombs, the oppressive atmosphere becomes harder to ignore. The walls seem to close in around you, the air grows heavier, and the darkness feels alive, pulsing with the memories of the past. Every sound, every movement feels amplified, as though the catacombs are listening, waiting for something. It is easy to imagine the souls of the departed walking beside you, following you through the dark, their presence an unspoken reminder that death is never truly gone, it simply lingers, waiting for its time to speak again. Some believe that the souls of the dead are not simply wandering, they are trying to communicate, to make their presence known to the living. Whether through footsteps in the dark, fleeting shadows, or the sound of whispers in the tunnels, the dead of the catacombs may still be reaching out, calling for attention, for remembrance. They were once part of the world above, and now they linger below, their voices lost in the silence of the earth. A dark legacy. The catacombs of Rome are not just a place of death, they are a place of mystery, a reminder of the ancient world and the people who lived, died, and were forgotten. They are a labyrinth of the dead, filled with the souls of those who have left their mark on history, yet remain hidden in the dark, waiting for the living to remember them. The spirits of the catacombs are not just the remnants of the past, they are an ongoing presence, a part of the eternal cycle of life and death that continues beneath the streets of Rome. And so, as you leave the catacombs, you may feel that something is still watching, something that lingers in the dark, just beyond the edge of your vision. The dead of the catacombs may not be gone, they may simply be waiting for the next soul to walk their winding path, to join them in the tunnels of the dead. Palazzo della Cancelleria, the cursed palace amid the breathtaking beauty of Rome, where Renaissance architecture meets the city's eternal past, stands a structure of unparalleled elegance, the Palazzo della Cancelleria. With its grand facade, ornate stonework, and imposing columns, the palace is a stunning example of the city's architectural mastery. But beneath its gleaming exterior lies a dark and terrifying secret. The Palazzo della Cancelleria is rumored to be cursed, haunted by the restless spirits of those who once suffered under the tyranny of the infamous Emperor Nero. Built upon the very site of Nero's theater, a place steeped in the blood of both innocent and guilty, this majestic palace holds the memories of a dark, ancient past. Those who wander its halls today may still sense the ghosts of the past lingering, their whispers in the corners, their presence felt in the chill that sweeps through the rooms. It is said that the spirits of those who perished in the theater under Nero's rule, many of whom met horrific fates, have never left. And even now, the palace serves as a constant reminder that some places are never fully cleansed of the bloodshed that once stained them. The shadows of Emperor Nero, one of Rome's most notorious rulers, left behind a legacy of cruelty that still sends shivers down the spines of those who study his reign. His reign was marked by acts of unspeakable violence, including the persecution of early Christians and a series of public executions meant to fuel his insatiable thirst for power. But one of his most infamous acts occurred within the very theater that would later become the foundation of the Palazzo della Cancelleria. Nero's theater, constructed by the emperor himself, was designed to showcase his personal grandeur, an edifice where he could indulge his passions for music, theater, and public spectacle. The theater was a place of decadence, but it was also a place of terror. Here, Nero executed those he deemed enemies, often in gruesome ways meant to entertain the public while feeding his thirst for blood. Christians, slaves, and even those who simply stood against him were slaughtered, their deaths broadcast for all to witness. The theater became a symbol of death and oppression, a place where no soul was safe. When the Palazzo della Cancelleria was built upon the ruins of Nero's theater in the late 15th century, it was intended to be a majestic work of art, a testament to the power and wealth of the church. Yet, it seems the palace could never escape the dark energy left behind by its former occupant. The very ground upon which it was built carried the stains of those who had suffered in Nero's time, and it is said that the palace could never fully cleanse itself of the horrors that transpired there. The curse of the palazzo. It wasn't long after the palace was constructed that strange occurrences began to be reported. Servants, workers, and visitors alike began to experience eerie phenomena that couldn't be explained. At night, when the palace was empty and still, strange sounds echoed through the corridors. Whispers seemed to float in the air, soft and indistinct, as though coming from the walls themselves. In rooms where no one had entered, the sound of furniture scraping across the floor would be heard, though there was no one to move it. Doors that had been securely locked would suddenly open on their own, creaking and groaning as if something unseen was pushing them open. Some workers even claimed to have seen objects move on their own, books shifting on shelves, candles flickering wildly, and paintings swaying as if disturbed by an invisible hand. Perhaps the most unsettling of these phenomena were the cold gusts of wind that rushed through locked rooms. These icy breezes would come from nowhere, flowing through the palace's grand halls, despite all windows being shut and the doors tightly closed. The temperature would drop dramatically, and a sense of unease would fill the air. Those who were caught in the rooms during these gusts would often report feeling an inexplicable sensation of dread, an overwhelming feeling of being watched, as though something, or someone, was waiting just beyond their vision. Despite these strange occurrences, it wasn't until later that the haunting began to take on a more terrifying form. Servants and visitors began to report seeing ghostly apparitions, figures that appeared suddenly and vanished just as quickly. These spirits, often seen at the edges of rooms or down long, dark corridors, seemed to be more than just shadows. They were described as ethereal, semi-transparent, and often in states of agony. But the most disturbing of these apparitions was that of a hooded monk, a figure who seemed to materialize out of the very stone of the palace itself. The hooded monk. The spectral figure of the hooded monk became one of the most widely reported apparitions within the palace. Cloaked in a dark robe, the monk's face was always hidden beneath the folds of his hood, making him appear both distant and unreachable. Those who claimed to have seen him described a profound sense of sadness and despair emanating from the figure, as though he were searching for something, or perhaps seeking redemption for some past sin. The monk would appear at various locations within the palace, always moving silently through the corridors and halls. His presence was often accompanied by a strange, heavy silence, a quiet so thick it felt suffocating. Some claimed to have seen the monk standing in the corners of rooms, staring at them with unseen eyes. Others reported hearing the soft sound of chanting, low and mournful, as though the monk were reciting an ancient prayer. But whenever anyone approached him, the figure would vanish into the air, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread. The ghostly monk's identity remains a mystery. Some speculate that he is a spirit tied to the tragic past of Nero's theater, possibly one of the many souls who perished under the emperor's brutal regime. It is believed that the monk's restless spirit is unable to find peace, trapped within the palace's walls, unable to escape the cycle of torment. Others believe the monk could be a later addition, perhaps a figure from the time of the palace's construction, someone connected to the dark energy that permeated the building. Whatever the monk's true identity may be, his presence remains a constant source of fear within the Palazzo della Cancelleria. His spectral figure is a reminder that some places are forever bound to their past, their history inextricably tied to the souls who once lived and died there. The unsettling legacy as the years have passed, the reports of strange happenings in the Palazzo della Cancelleria have not subsided. Visitors to the palace still report feeling the weight of the past as they move through its grand halls. The oppressive atmosphere that once permeated the building continues to linger, an invisible force that seems to pull at the very air. Some claim to feel the presence of the ghostly monk, others hear the whispers of those who suffered in Nero's theater. And though the palace has been renovated and restored over the centuries, it seems that the curse of the building, woven into its very foundation, has never truly been lifted. The Palazzo della Cancelleria remains a stunning testament to the power of the Renaissance and the beauty of Roman architecture. Yet, within its walls lies a dark and terrible history, a curse that refuses to let go of its victims. It stands as a reminder that no matter how grand or beautiful a building may be, some places will always carry the weight of their past. The souls of the dead, it seems, are not so easily forgotten, and the curse of the Palazzo della Cancelleria is one that will likely never be broken. For those who dare to visit the palace, the presence of the past is palpable. The whispered voices, the cold gusts of wind, and the ghostly figures that roam its halls serve as a chilling reminder that even in the most beautiful places, the dead can never truly rest. The Palazzo della Cancelleria, with its stunning exterior and dark history, is forever a palace of the cursed, haunted by the spirits of those who have suffered there, and by the ghosts of Rome's bloody, tyrannical past. The ghost of Emperor Nero, the Domus Aurea. Once upon a time, atop the Palatine Hill in Rome, stood a palace so grand that it seemed to defy the laws of nature, a palace that reflected the heights of imperial excess, the depths of tyranny, and the darkness of a soul long corrupted by power. The Domus Aurea, or the Golden House, was the epitome of Emperor Nero's reign, an architectural marvel that stretched across an unimaginable expanse, adorned with gold, precious gems, and the finest art of the age. Nero, the man who built it, was as extravagant as his palace, but history remembers him not for his artistic pursuits or architectural achievements. Instead, he is known for his cruelty, his madness, and his insatiable thirst for power. When Nero died, allegedly by his own hand, the world sighed in relief. Yet, the legend of Nero didn't die with him. His ghost, some say, still lingers within the ruins of the Domus Aurea, a place that once reflected his immense glory and is now a shadow of its former self. Over the centuries, many have reported strange occurrences at the site of Nero's former palace. From eerie laughter that echoes through the night to strange lights flickering in the darkness, something seems to haunt the ruins. Could it be that the spirit of the mad emperor still lingers there, forever trapped in the afterlife, seeking vengeance for his perceived betrayals? The rise of Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus was born in 37 AD, and he was the last ruler of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. He ascended to the throne at the age of 16, after the death of his great-uncle and stepfather, Emperor Claudius. What followed was a reign of unparalleled indulgence and brutality. Nero's love for the arts, while significant, was overshadowed by his tyrannical reign. His rule is marked by lavish parties, extravagant building projects, and a disregard for human life. His infamous persecution of Christians, his suspected involvement in the murder of his mother, and his alleged role in the Great Fire of Rome, all contributed to his reputation as one of history's most despised emperors. The Domus Aurea, which he began building after the fire in 64 AD, was the symbol of his power and excess. This immense palace was a sprawling complex, complete with lush gardens, a massive artificial lake, and halls adorned in gold leaf. It was a testament to Nero's vision of immortality, an architectural masterpiece designed to reflect his grandeur. Yet this palace was also a symbol of his depravity and excesses, an opulent, gilded prison of his own making. The ruins of the Domus Aurea, now buried beneath the more recent layers of Rome's development, tell the story of a man who reached the heights of power, only to fall into madness. The legend of Nero's ghost. When Nero died in 68 AD, rumors quickly spread that his death was not the end of his reign. While some believed that he had been struck down by fate, others whispered that his spirit would never leave the place that symbolized his unparalleled ambition. His palace, the Domus Aurea, which he had loved and built with such passion, became a dark monument to his reign, and many believed that it held the key to his restless soul. According to legend, Nero's ghost still roams the ruins of the Domus Aurea, trapped within the labyrinthine halls that he once called home. The emperor, it is said, cannot rest because of his insatiable desire for vengeance. His violent death, the betrayals by those who once served him, and the rebellion that led to his downfall are said to have left a mark on his soul, one that cannot be erased by the passage of time. His spirit, cursed by his own ambition, is said to wander the palace, forever seeking retribution for the perceived injustices that led to his demise. Visitors to the ruins have reported strange occurrences for centuries. The most common of these experiences is the eerie laughter that seems to echo through the crumbling halls, as though the emperor himself is amused by the misfortune of those who dare to enter his domain. The sound of this laughter is often described as cold and mocking, a deep and unsettling chuckle that fills the air with a sense of dread. The laughter often comes without warning, bouncing off the broken walls of the palace, growing louder and more insistent as if drawing the visitor deeper into the heart of the ruins. The flickering lights and the feeling of being watched. The Domus Aurea, despite its abandonment and decay, still holds an unsettling presence. Visitors have described strange lights flickering in the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the walls and illuminating the empty rooms of the once glorious palace. These lights are not the warm, welcoming glow of modern lamps. Rather, they are cold, flickering bursts of light that seem to materialize out of nowhere and vanish just as quickly as they appear. The lights often appear when the ruins are most silent, casting long, menacing shadows over the crumbling columns and empty halls. Those who have ventured into the ruins in the dead of night report feeling a sudden drop in temperature, an icy chill that washes over them despite the warmth of the Roman air. It is as though the very stones of the Domus Aurea are exhaling a cold breath, a reminder that something unnatural still lingers within its walls. More disturbing still is the feeling of being watched. Visitors speak of an overwhelming sense of unease, as though invisible eyes are following their every movement. The sensation of being watched is so intense that it becomes nearly impossible to shake, and it is often accompanied by a feeling of paralysis, as though the soul is being drawn into the clutches of something unseen. Some even claim to have felt a cold hand brush their skin or heard the faint sound of footsteps echoing behind them, though, when they turn, there is nothing there. The figure in the shadows. Among the most chilling reports from those who have dared to spend time in the Domus Aurea is the appearance of a shadowy figure. Cloaked in darkness, this figure is said to resemble the outline of a man, but with an unnatural, shifting form. Some describe it as a tall, regal figure, draped in the ancient garb of the emperor, while others claim it appears as a vague silhouette, flickering and changing shape as it moves. This figure is often seen standing in the farthest corners of the ruins, watching silently as visitors pass by. Those who have seen it report a profound sense of dread, as if the figure is not just a spectral presence, but the very essence of Nero himself, watching over his former domain with vengeful eyes. The figure is said to move when no one is looking, appearing suddenly in another spot when you turn away. Its movements are erratic, almost as if it is trying to communicate something, or perhaps it is simply lingering in the space between life and death, bound to the ruins for eternity. A ghost trapped in time. The story of Nero's ghost is one of a ruler whose madness and ambition left an indelible mark on the world. His reign ended in disgrace, but it seems that his spirit could not escape the pull of the past. The Domus Aurea, once a symbol of his greatness, is now a place where the emperor's ghost is said to roam, seeking vengeance for betrayals real and imagined. For those brave enough to visit the ruins, the echoes of Nero's reign still resonate. The laughter, the flickering lights, and the overwhelming sense of being watched are constant reminders that some spirits cannot rest. It is as though Nero's soul is trapped in the ruins of the palace he once ruled, forever seeking something, perhaps redemption, perhaps vengeance, but never peace. And so, the legend of Nero's ghost endures. Those who visit the Domus Aurea today may still feel the presence of the mad emperor, lingering among the crumbling remains of his once glorious palace. The laughter of Nero echoes through the ruins, a haunting reminder that some spirits, once they have tasted power, cannot easily let go. For Nero, it seems, the afterlife is just another kingdom to rule. Ponte Sisto, the ghost bridge. The Tiber River, which winds its way through the heart of Rome, carries with it centuries of history, stories, and mysteries. One of the most striking and ominous landmarks that crosses this river is Ponte Sisto, a bridge that has stood for centuries, bearing witness to the rise and fall of empires, the ebb and flow of time. Today, it is a quiet crossing between two parts of the eternal city, but beneath the serenity of its weathered stones, the bridge holds a dark secret, a legend that has been whispered for generations. For on certain nights, when the moon is high and the air heavy with the weight of history, it is said that the ghost of Pope Innocent X makes his spectral journey across the bridge. A figure clothed in the robes of a pope, he rides in a black carriage drawn by skeletal horses. The ghostly procession appears only on the anniversary of his death, vanishing into thin air just as mysteriously as it arrived. Many who have had the misfortune of witnessing this eerie apparition speak of it in hushed tones, as if afraid that the mere mention of the ghost will invoke his presence once more. But the legend of Pope Innocent X's haunting is more than just a chilling story. It is a dark reminder of a soul trapped by the consequences of his own actions, doomed to repeat his journey for all eternity. The rise of Pope Innocent X Giovanni Battista Pamphilj, known to history as Pope Innocent X, ascended to the papacy in 1644. He was a man of significant power and influence during his time, but his reign was not without controversy. A member of the powerful Pamphilj family, he was elected pope at the age of 56, after a turbulent period of papal elections. His pontificate was marked by his strict policies, particularly in regard to the arts, where he sought to maintain control over the burgeoning Baroque movement. He was known for his formidable character, deeply entrenched in the political machinations of Rome, and his staunchly conservative views. However, his rule was also marred by personal tragedy and political intrigue. One of the most significant events of his papacy was his role in the infamous trial and condemnation of the artist Gian Lorenzo Bernini, whose works had been admired by previous popes. Innocent X, however, had no appreciation for the artist's flamboyant style and sought to curb his influence within the Vatican. This struggle for power and control left behind a legacy of bitterness and resentment, particularly among those who felt the Pope had betrayed the arts and the vision of Rome itself. But perhaps the most tragic chapter of Pope Innocent X's life came through his personal loss. In 1650, after a long and painful illness, his beloved sister-in-law, Costanza, passed away. Pope Innocent X was devastated by her death, and it is said that her passing left a profound mark on his spirit. Some believe that this personal tragedy triggered a deep remorse in the Pope, one that would haunt him long after his death. The dark legacy Pope Innocent X died in 1655, after a papacy that was both successful in some respects and disastrous in others. Despite his influence and control, the years following his death were filled with scandal, as his administration had been marked by accusations of corruption, nepotism, and greed. The Pope's family, eager to preserve their wealth and status, continued to exert control over the Vatican long after his passing. The Pamphilj family's dominance over the city left a bitter taste, and as the years wore on, the legacy of Innocent X seemed increasingly tainted by corruption and the darker side of power. But the darkness did not end with the Pope's death. According to legend, it was precisely during his final moments that the curse of Ponte Sisto was born. It is said that in the hours following his passing, as the streets of Rome fell silent in mourning, the pontiff's spirit was not able to rest. His soul, burdened by guilt over his earthly misdeeds and the loss of his sister-in-law, became trapped in a realm between the living and the dead. For years, people claimed to have heard strange noises near Ponte Sisto, unexplained sounds in the dead of night that carried an air of foreboding. Soon, whispers began to circulate that the ghost of Pope Innocent X was seen riding his black carriage across the bridge, a vision so unsettling that few dared to look directly at it. The ghostly procession, it was said, appeared every year on the anniversary of the Pope's death, making the same journey across the Tiber River, only to vanish into the mist of time, never to be seen again. The spectral procession, the details of the apparition have remained consistent over the centuries, with numerous witnesses describing the same chilling sight, a dark figure draped in papal robes, sitting rigidly in a black carriage pulled by skeletal horses. The eerie procession moves slowly, as though time itself has been distorted. The hollow eyes of the Pope's ghost stare out into the night, his face frozen in an expression of sorrow and regret, as if he is searching for redemption or perhaps a final peace that will never come. The skeletal horses, their bones clicking and creaking with each step, pull the carriage with a disturbing grace. Their eyes are described as glowing faintly, a cold, unnatural light that flickers in the darkness. The carriage, which once may have been a symbol of wealth and power, is now a vehicle of despair, moving with an eerie silence that makes the air feel thick and heavy. The procession crosses Ponte Sisto as if it were part of an ancient ritual, a journey from the afterlife back to the world of the living. Witnesses have reported feeling an overwhelming sense of unease when the procession passes, as if the very fabric of reality bends in the presence of the Pope's spirit. Some claim to have seen the apparition with their own eyes, while others have heard the sound of the carriage wheels and the faint clattering of the horses' hoofs. But when they turn to look, there is nothing to be seen, only the quiet waters of the Tiber River flowing beneath the bridge, as if the vision had never occurred. A warning from the past. Some believe that the ghost of Pope Innocent X is not merely the wandering spirit of a man trapped by his own actions, but a warning from the past. His spectral journey across Ponte Sisto is said to represent his eternal punishment for the crimes he committed during his life, his greed, his political maneuvering, and his disregard for the well-being of those who lived under his reign. The carriage, drawn by skeletal horses, is said to symbolize the weight of the Pope's sins, a journey that he cannot escape no matter how many years pass. There are those who claim that the sighting of the ghost is an omen, a reminder that the past is never truly gone. Some believe that when the apparition appears, it signals a time of great unrest or political upheaval in Rome, a moment when the spirit of Innocent X warns of the consequences of unchecked power and corruption. But what remains unclear is whether the ghost's appearance is a sign of something greater, something far darker than mere political machinations. The restless soul. As the years pass, the legend of Pope Innocent X and his haunting of Ponte Sisto has become intertwined with the rich history of Rome. The bridge, with its age-old stones and silent passage over the Tiber River, has become a symbol of the city's forgotten past, a place where the ghosts of history linger, waiting to be remembered. Perhaps the most unsettling part of the tale is that, despite the passage of time, Pope Innocent X's ghost still appears. He rides his black carriage every year on the anniversary of his death, crossing the bridge that once spanned the city's political and spiritual heart. His ghostly procession vanishes as mysteriously as it appears, leaving behind only the sense of dread and the knowledge that some spirits, like the sins they carry, can never be truly laid to rest. For those brave enough to venture near Ponte Sisto on that fateful night, the question remains: is the appearance of Pope Innocent X's ghost a warning, a reminder of the consequences of unchecked power? Or is it the endless journey of a soul trapped in the endless cycle of its own regrets, doomed to repeat his journey for eternity? The Vatican, Whispers of the Damned. The Vatican, a city-state that sits at the very heart of Catholicism, is a place of immense beauty, power, and spiritual significance. To millions, it is the home of the Pope and the seat of the Roman Catholic Church, filled with towering basilicas, iconic artworks, and ancient texts. But beneath its grandeur and holiness, there are whispers of a dark and haunted past, where the line between the divine and the damned is often blurred. Through its corridors of power, and its walls lined with sacred relics, the Vatican holds secrets that go far beyond the theological. Murder, intrigue, and the occult have all found their way into the heart of the Church, and the souls of those who met untimely and violent ends within its sacred halls are believed to linger, their presence felt by those who walk these shadowed paths. Among these spectral stories, one of the most chilling is that of the Smoking Pope, a ghostly figure that haunts the Vatican, a reminder of a time when the Church's relationship with the occult was far more complicated than most would care to admit. The Smoking Pope and the dark past of Pope Sylvester I. The legend of the Smoking Pope traces its roots to Pope Sylvester II, born Gerbert of Aurillac in the 10th century. A man of exceptional intellect, Gerbert was a brilliant scholar and a pioneer in the fields of mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. His rise to the papacy, however, was shrouded in controversy. While many admired his intellect and innovation, others feared his association with the occult. Gerbert was rumored to have studied in Moorish Spain, where he was exposed to magical texts and practices that, at the time, were considered forbidden by the Church. In particular, Gerbert was believed to have studied astrology and necromancy, disciplines that were considered heretical by the very institution that would later elevate him to the papacy. Despite these accusations, Gerbert was crowned Pope Sylvester II in 999 AD, a title that would eventually become infamous not only for his intellectual contributions but also for the dark rumors that surrounded his reign. Upon his death in 1003, Pope Sylvester II was buried with the kind of reverence reserved for high-ranking church officials. However, soon after, rumors began to spread about his tomb. It was said that his body was not at rest, that his soul lingered within the walls of the Vatican, cursing the very institution he had led. According to some, Sylvester's association with the occult had condemned him to an eternal existence in the afterlife, where he could never find peace. Over the centuries, the tale of the smoking pope grew more macabre. Witnesses, often terrified and reluctant to speak of their experiences, reported seeing the ghostly figure of a pope dressed in dark, flowing robes, a cloud of smoke perpetually trailing from his figure. The apparition would appear in various locations around the Vatican, particularly around the Apostolic Palace, the residence of the Pope. The ghost would move silently through the halls, the smoke emanating from his body, filling the air with a foul odor. The sight of this smoking figure would be accompanied by a chill so intense that those who encountered it would feel as though the very air around them had frozen. Some claimed that the apparition would vanish into the walls, leaving behind only the lingering scent of sulfur, a smell that was unmistakable and ominous. The unsettling shadows of the Apostolic Palace, in addition to the ghost of Pope Sylvester II, the Vatican's Apostolic Palace, home to the Pope's private apartments and the administrative heart of the Vatican, is said to be haunted by more sinister entities. Visitors to the palace often speak of shadowy figures that seem to flicker in and out of existence, moving through the hallways with unnatural speed. These figures are not mere figments of imagination but seem to embody a malevolent presence, as if they are watching, waiting for something or someone. Some say these figures are the spirits of those who met untimely deaths within the palace. The Vatican has long been a place of political intrigue, with power struggles often leading to bloody consequences. During the Renaissance and beyond, the Papal States were rife with corruption, violence, and secretive dealings, and the Vatican itself was no stranger to murder and betrayal. One of the most infamous events tied to the Vatican's dark past is the death of Pope Alexander VI, a Borgia pope whose papacy was marked by scandal, nepotism, and violence. Alexander VI was suspected of numerous heinous crimes, including poisoning his enemies and engaging in incestuous relationships with his own daughter, Lucrezia Borgia. It is said that the Vatican's halls became stained with the blood of those who dared oppose the Borgia family. And while the Borgia dynasty has long since faded, their legacy lives on in the whispers of the damned, as those who died by treachery and deceit continue to haunt the Vatican to this day. In the stillness of the Apostolic Palace, there are those who report hearing the echo of distant footsteps, the sound of muffled voices, or the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. The presence of these spectral figures often brings an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the very air is thick with the lingering spirits of those who met tragic ends within these walls. For many, it is difficult to shake the feeling that the Vatican is a place where the living and the dead are inextricably linked, forever bound together by the weight of the secrets they keep. The ghost of Pope John Paul I. While the Vatican is home to many dark and haunted tales, one more recent story concerns the tragic and mysterious death of Pope John Paul I. Elected in August 1978. Pope John Paul I served only 33 days before he was found dead in his bed, an apparent victim of a heart attack. However, conspiracy theories surrounding his death quickly surfaced, with many suggesting that he had been murdered due to his efforts to reform the Vatican and its finances. While the Vatican's official account maintains that Pope John Paul I died of natural causes, rumors of foul play and a cover-up persist. Those who have worked in the Vatican over the years report a strange and unsettling presence around the papal apartment where he died. Some say they have felt an eerie chill in the room, and others claim to have seen a shadowy figure moving within the confines of the apartment. The ghostly figure, often described as a man dressed in papal robes, is believed by some to be the restless spirit of Pope John Paul I, seeking justice for his untimely death and the secrets that were buried with him. The secrets of the Vatican. The Vatican, with its wealth of history, power, and spiritual significance, holds many secrets, some of which may never be uncovered. Over the centuries, the Vatican has witnessed countless acts of cruelty, deception, and violence. But it also serves as the site of profound spiritual transformation and sacred rituals. The conflict between the sacred and the profane, the divine and the damned, runs deep within the heart of the Vatican, and it is this tension that fuels the ghost stories and eerie tales that permeate its halls. From the ghost of the smoking Pope to the shadowy figures that stalk the Apostolic Palace, the Vatican is a place where the past refuses to die. The spirits of those who met untimely deaths within its walls continue to haunt its ancient halls, trapped in a cycle of unrest and despair. And whether these are the souls of the Vatican's dark past or something more sinister, one thing is certain: the Vatican remains a place where the living and the dead are never truly apart. A final word as the sun sets behind the Vatican's towering walls and the city quiets for the night. The whispers of the damned grow louder. The shadows lengthen, and the air seems thick with the weight of centuries of secrets. Within the Vatican, where the past is never truly gone, the restless souls of history continue their eternal watch, guarding the city's most profound mysteries. In the end, perhaps it is best to approach the Vatican with reverence and caution, for those who dare to venture too deep may find that some spirits do not wish to be forgotten. The Vatican is a place where the living must coexist with the dead, and in the stillness of the night, it is impossible to say which of them will have the final word. As we conclude our terrifying journey through the darkest corners of Rome, it's impossible to deny the eerie presence that lingers within this ancient city. From the chilling Capuchin crypt, where the bones of over 4,000 monks decorate the walls and haunting displays, to the ghostly apparitions that haunt the dungeons of Castel Sant'Angelo, Rome is a place where history and the supernatural collide in a truly unsettling way. The whispers of the damned echo through the catacombs, where the restless spirits of early Christians, martyrs, and even pagans continue to wander the labyrinthine tunnels. The shadows of the Vatican, a place of both spiritual significance and sinister secrets, serve as a constant reminder that the past is never truly gone. Whether it's the smoking ghost of Pope Sylvester II or the spectral figures lurking in the Apostolic Palace, the Vatican holds more than just divine relics. It holds stories of betrayal, darkness, and death. And who could forget the haunting of Ponte Sisto, where the ghostly figure of Pope Innocent X rides across the bridge in a black carriage, a foreboding reminder of the city's turbulent past? Or the tortured spirit of Beatrice Cenci, whose restless soul still roams the grounds of Castel Sant'Angelo, her severed head forever cradled in her hands. Rome is a city steeped in history, but it's also a city haunted by the tragedies and secrets of those who have come before. As we've seen, these places are not just remnants of the past, they are the living, breathing manifestations of centuries of human suffering, betrayal, and bloodshed. The spirits that linger within these walls, tunnels, and bridges are a testament to the enduring weight of Rome's history, and a chilling reminder that some stories never truly end. As you leave this journey behind, remember that Rome's darkest secrets are never far from reach. The next time you find yourself walking along the ancient streets, take a moment to listen closely to the whispers in the wind, the footsteps behind you, or the strange chill that seems to settle in the air. You may just find that the eternal city is not as peaceful as it seems. Thank you for joining me on this spine-chilling adventure through the most haunted places in Rome. Stay curious, stay brave, and until next time, beware the shadows that lurk where history meets the supernatural.